Hi from Pax Europiana, this time from the highway of the Banja Luka Doboj. Let's call it Mr. Dodik Highway, why not? It was his idea, he wanted to have it, he wanted to have the East-West Highway here from Doboj to Banja Luka, and it's also continuing then to Croatia, to Gradiste, up to connect with the Zagreb-Belgrade Highway and the bridge. And actually it's very good, you know, that's really how driving should be. This is a real highway, this is like in Kosovo, a real highway, modern standards, and that's very good. I think it's not from Doboj, the part to Tuzla and Belgrade is missing, but I saw some things are under construction. I will see more of it in the future when I come back. But now I really enjoy this driving here. I'm not driving very fast, be careful, not drive fast. Also for the fuel, it's not good to drive over 120. I'm actually for a speed limit of 100 on all European highways to save fuel. But I was absolutely fascinated to find this highway. I've never been on it, and it's always a very good feeling to be on highways first time, because it's a sign of civilization, it's a sign of progress alongside, and normally then the prosperity develops. In this part, obviously, you know, the prosperity is urgently needed because it's very empty. Yeah? You know, Banja Luka is a good commercial center, but they chased and killed so many people in Prijedor that that's a very sad place. I will see how far this highway actually leads to, because I will try to be back fast. I want to go to Omaska, to the concentration camp which the Bosnian Serbs are running, but I'm not sure I will make it, but let's see how the timing is. It's already 8 o'clock, I need a little bit of sunlight to make some action, some video. Let's see for that, yeah. But obviously it's 30 years of Omaska, so it's important to go. I will check it out if it's possible, and I will keep you posted on that one. But on infrastructure, this is really very important. You see in Kosovo, almost all infrastructure is now on this level, not everything, but the road to Albania, yes. The road to Skopje, yes. And there will be the road to Chilan, it's under construction. The road to Peja, not so much, but it's progressing slowly. The road to Mitrovica, I've seen it almost completed, yeah, but not open for traffic after Vuštri. That's very good success in that terms. In the south of Serbia, I saw nothing, and there was a big nothing in the south of Serbia, because of course Vučić hates, you know, the moment he sees a mosque, he stops all public investments, it seems to me. But whatever, maybe he will improve and do something, and the EU should support the infrastructure in the south of Serbia, because south of Usice, Požega was very empty, and also the area towards because what is developed, to my best knowledge, I have to go there again, that's around Belgrade and this triangle with Kragujevac, Kraljevo, Valjevo, but west of Valjevo, because I should have gone to Valjevo actually, and that's the place, and that would have been very good and very logical. But in that part, towards the Drin River, so again the Drin River valley was extremely poor, underdeveloped, yeah, nothing, a big zero. I mean, nice place, nice land, nice people, yes, everything nice, yeah, but north of Usice and west of Valjevo, a big poverty hole in Serbia. I'm really, everything which is this border to Bosnia, they keep it with some military assets. Here, of course, big flags. I miss the Bosnian flag, Mr. Dodik. This is not Serbia. Here something is really wrong. You know, despite the success of this highway, which I think is the European standard in 2022 to have highways, but still it's a big achievement. I congratulate everybody involved. But the highway is good. But outside you see a big empty, because they have stolen this land from the owners, much of it, and it's of course a very sad story. When you go by bus, you see more of the houses, and they are all like ruins here. This is still a very much conflict area. Not that the conflict is there, but from the past conflict dominated, because the owners were chased away, the property was stolen, but nobody new came, and it's very sparsely populated area here, and there's only the highway to Banja Luka, which is their centralistic kind of headquarter, but they're doing about nothing for the region, because ultimately these people are very egocentric, centralistic socialists, yeah, even when they say they are for liberal, but forget it. They are, for them, they are ego-centers and Nazist, and what they want is money from themselves and power. Power is the way to money, and so they basically control everything, and they are not really interested in farming subsidies, only if they can steal it. But that's how it works. So they want big project to be done, but small and medium development, of course no. Regional development, of course no. So they want some prestige object like Antrittsgrad, one of the most bizarre projects I saw in the Balkans up to now. And then in between they want, of course, access to Belgrade. That's for them the capital, and they want to whatever, have their girlfriend in Belgrade and spend money on her, or in London, these kind of things, and the rest they really couldn't care less, yeah? And so in between, that's for them some kind of flyover, drive-through country. But real economic development based on federalism is of course very different, because federalism means that you allow everybody to develop, that you allow on competitive basis, yeah, to have the municipalities and the region to do something and to promote investment and to promote projects and to promote the region. Because you want to mobilize basically all resources of a nation, in a sense, for the economic development for themselves, yeah? And you need then, for that, you need to have federalism. That means competing regional and municipal areas with power and with responsibility and budget. They are then competing and controlling each other. They are competing for investments, for projects, for public funding. They try to make the best for their region. But if you give only the center power, like Banja Luka, very good example, then the rest is basically just periphery. They are watching what happens in Banja Luka. They are invited from time to time to go there for festivals, but in between they can work their fields and watch the rich people passing between Belgrade and Banja Luka on the superhighway, and they themselves can watch the cows, the goats, and work the land, yeah? But they get no subsidies, they get no support, they get no regional infrastructure, they get no country roads, and all these things. That's the idea of centralism. Idea of federalism is that there is this competition between municipalities, inside municipalities, between different parties, between people. But it's organized competition on the equal access to public resources. There's transparency in land, in the property rights, there is transparency in the asset registers, there is also transparency in the land construction permits, because that's of course so important. There's transparency in the subsidy system, so it's open to everybody, not in the agricultural field, not only to the few connected who know the Prime Minister and go for him singing and dancing. And that's the idea of federalism. It's a beautiful concept and it works. Yeah? Look how successful America is. That's a federal state based on federalism. Canada, UK, not so much, because they are also very centralistic, imperial. Everything in London that's super rich, rest not so much. Yeah? Then you have here, of course, the same. Yeah? Banja Luka, it's no surprise that they like centralist London, because they see it, do it everything big in the big town, and the rest, you know, you don't see a single house here for kilometers and kilometers. Yeah? That's, man, and that's good when you are the landlord and you have some people who do the work. And that's kolkhosen system here. It's a socialist system ultimately what Dodik has built. He will deny it. He says he's a liberal economist, but don't get me wrong. Don't get him wrong. Don't trust him. Yeah, that's the situation here in Banja Luka, on the road to Banja Luka. It's not very long motorway ride. I think it's about 120 kilometers. The motorway is very good, and I'm very happy that I can share this with you. You have seen now quite a lot of the country. I have been in the south of Serbia. That's as far, very close to, as far as you can go. Novi Bazaar is already very close to the border with Kosovo and with Montenegro. It was part of Montenegro historically. The people were very connected. Some people on my Twitter feed made jokes when I promoted Novi Bazaar would recognize Kosovo. That Novi Bazaar should be part of Kosovo, but I'm not saying that. I'm very much in favor of Novi Bazaar staying in European Sanjak, a region of European Serbia inside Federal Europe. But just they have to fulfill the conditions which are necessary for that. That means recognition of Kosovo, the breaking with Russia, and the European sanctions regime, of course. It's very sunny here. Yeah? I don't like it that much to drive against the West. I'm for the West, and here they have some, it's not a sun protection, but a noise protection. Maybe there is somebody living here. I don't know why they did it. That's very good. So that's very advanced. There is really, but there is no houses. Only this, typical ruins. You did see it. It is the typical ruins I was talking about. Yeah, it's a sad story, but it's true. But Banja Luka is nice. I will show you Banja Luka. I was there in December. You might remember there was a Twitter storm on that one, on my feed, and it was very interesting. I promised to come back again. Now I'm coming. I hope they like me and don't beat me up. I really hate to be beaten up. I was once beaten up when I was 19, and that was it. So I don't want to repeat that. But normally they are nice, yeah. I drink a rakia with everybody, and I simply don't tell that I'm in Banja Luka until I'm gone. That's the idea. But obviously it's not so easy. From time to time they follow my Twitter feed. Yeah, tweeting I won't do from Banja Luka. That I think is for security reason. I'm not so important, yeah, don't worry about me. But I'm just very important for myself. But it's still painful to be beaten up. And they killed the guy, it's not like they are, so justice for, I forgot the name now actually. Justice for, I have to come back. There was a monument because the father of the son, which was killed 2 years ago, and he was basically, because they're very bored, the youngsters there, and then when you do a wrong move in one of the pubs, and then they killed one guy in the winter. And the winter is very lonely because they start to fight for girls or for politics or for business, that I don't know, and then they simply put him off, yeah. And then it's always like this, that one guy is connected with his father with the politics, and then they do as if nothing happened. And so that's always the case in this kind of closed societies, because Banja Luka ultimately very closed society. Everything is controlled by one party. They have opposition now. It's not exactly only one party, and actually it's 250,000 voters Mr. Dodik has, and he behaves as he will be the king of the Balkans. Goes to Petersburg like big guy from Europe. I mean, he's representing 250,000 voters. Okay, that's also important. Every voter counts, and it's 250,000. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's a bit bigger than Linz, but does it make him to a big player on the global scene, who is dancing with Putin in the Petersburg Forum together with Afghanistan? I mean, that's very questionable. I think even for Putin to mess up things, it's just to annoy us. He knows, of course, the division lines of Europe in the Balkans, and he knows Serbia very well, and he knows Bosnia very well, better than our politicians, and he really, in a way, he cares, yeah, because these are the weak underbellies of Europe, and here he can do us pain, and he's ready to do it. I'm talking Putin here now, and of course, yeah, they are now Brnjavor. That's one of the exits. Wow. You see the land still, and Tuzla was really a dynamic center. Here, there are some houses, very good. I saw some houses. That's good, that's a Stanari, but it's, when you see, it's very good to see. I don't know if you can see, but it's always these ruins. Many of the houses here in Republika Srpska, the entity which I want to dissolve, is then empty ruins. You can see it, I think you can see it. And here, the other side, I'm not talking nonsense, you know, it's empty, empty, empty. This is the situation here. And the sun is setting, I think, on Masca. I will be in the dark. Anyhow, what to do? It's very impressive. Banja Luka is waiting and it's coming closer. And of course, on a highway, you have the kilometers are going fast. Yeah, that's a big advantage. Yeah, and obviously, that's something very, very good. Yeah. So I'm heading onwards. I see if the highway is going to Prijedor already. I have no idea. They killed most of the people, by the way. Prijedor was very mixed city, and they chased 10,000 of people away because they wanted to create their Krajina. Their Krajina is very important for them. That's basically the idea of this state-led. Krajina is a bit confusing because when you're deeper in Balkan politics, you have as well the Krajina in Croatia. That's also always the same word, 55 kilometers more. Krajina means borderland, basically. Ukraine means also borderland, everything. Krajina, Krajina means country. Krajina means the borderland. And it was exactly also what we called it, the Grenzbauern, the armed military frontier. It was a militarized frontier of the Austrian Empire to the Ottoman Empire. They needed people who want to live there. They gave them land. Christians who left the Ottoman Empire, they got settlement rights and citizenship and the duty to protect and to fight against the Ottoman Empire, because the Ottoman Empire was having also this kind of militia like Mr. Milosevic and Mladic, this kind of uncontrolled archons. Yeah? They were called in German Karutzen, and they were basically this kind of there's many words for that. They were not paid, but they were allowed to make booty, like freebooting, riding, attack, like you would basically booty making riding groups, bandits, ultimately bandits, and they were lawless, but they had some kind of coordination from the Ottoman forces, and they were allowed to harass the people in these borderlands. And so you needed a borderland of warriors, basically farming warriors, and that's what the Serbs knew very well, farming and fighting. And then the farmers and fighters, they were basically getting land there, and they had also fought the Ottomans, I guess, and then they wanted anyhow to leave, or they were already on a search warrant from the Turks, and then they were giving these settlement rights in this area. And that is especially because Bosnia, you see this is Bosnia, and then it was getting flatter here, and this was the land which was contested between the Ottoman Empire. Often the borders were a bit fluid, yeah, in a way. It was the vacuum pressure points between the empires, and then the ones sent in these horse riders, and the others sent in these settled farming fighters, fighting farmers. Yeah. And this was exactly what the Krajina was in Croatia. That's basically in the southern Krajina, if you want to know, if you want to call it like this. I think it's not the accurate term, but that's the where in Croatia this statelet has a Krajina, and this Krajina was then in 95 it was reconquered by the Croatian forces and the Operation Storm. And then there was this exodus, which was an ordered exodus of the Serb population there. They were ordered to go, and they wanted to go because they didn't want to live under Croatia, and they knew that they also committed a lot of crimes. They call it now genocide, but it's not the correct term. Absolutely, there was no genocidal violence against the Serbs who left. Yeah, they were free to go, and they really went to go, and there were about 200,000 of them. So it was a big human tragedy as well, but not a genocide because there was no state-organized violence against them. There was no killing, yeah, in massive form. Of course, people died in the war confrontation, but that was that, yeah. And that's a total narrative mistake or whatever, fake news of the Serbian side that they claimed the Operation Oluja to be genocide. Yeah. No. Just get that very right. Yeah. So we are coming here to that fact. And then basically that was the southern Crimea. Basically it's probably the name still. I don't know what the Croatian did with the name, but a lot of the Serb population has left in 95 in August. And then it was very dramatic summer, the summer of 95, yeah. Very dramatic summer. And that was summer of tragedy. Yes, I was at the summer university, I remember. It was in Germany, I think, and I had students from Croatia and from Serbia in the same working group. They all had military experience and political experience, but from the political parties, from the Democratic Party and from the HEZ, one working group. It was a very tense atmosphere, but we managed talking about Europe. Yes, and the Crimea, let's rise it again. It's the Crimea, it's Bundesland, Banja Luka is the capital. That's my proposal. I just want to dissolve the RS, not the Crimea. The Crimea should be very strong. And this is basically the Crimea. That was the borderland between the Hungarian part and Slavonia. Slavonia is not Slovenia, don't make mistake. Slovenia is a sovereign EU country and a member state. That's a bit in the north. That's basically very similar to Austria. Slovenia and Austria, honestly, you can not make a lot of difference. If you know both people, they are quite similar to our Carinthians in many aspects. The Slovenians a bit more hardworking, maybe. Anyhow, well, the Carinthians will excuse me that joke. And the situation is Slovenia and Croatia, Slavonia is it's a region of Croatia. It was obviously the kingdom. It was one of the regions of the Hungarian crown of the Habsburgs later, and it was Slavonia. That's basically eastern Croatia. Eastern Croatia with Vukovar as the main economic center, and this Slavonia, and that was basically that battlefield. It's very flat. When the highway, you go the highway from Zagreb to Belgrade. And that's very flat and direct, and that's the bratstvo, is always the brotherhood, and jedinstvo, the unity. That's why that's the slogan of Yugoslavia. Brotherhood, they didn't have too much. Unity is no longer, and actually there was never. But that was the slogans of the Yugoslavian Socialist Party, especially after 65, when they had this kind of unity and peace narrative developed after the revenge narrative of 45. Then in the bankruptcy and with American funding, they changed the narrative towards this kind of unity, bratstvo, jedinstvo, and they tried until Milosevic broke that line in this famous Politburo meeting with Stambolic, and he went berserk. Because he knew they were broke and this was hollow then, and he knew that the big force in town is Serb nationalism. He put his political future on that one, and he declared war against everybody else. He killed Stambolic, his political mentor, and he started these 4 wars. That's the short version of the end of Yugoslavia. It was not automatic, it was his political decision. He wanted to have power, and he used this ideological platform of Serb nationalism to oust his rival in the communist system and to end Yugoslavia, because he saw no future, because it was bankrupt anyhow. And so he went to that line, and that's the history of the fall of Yugoslavia in a nutshell. And the rest is a lot of bloodshed, and it was never a good country anyhow. Never worked. It was never a working democracy. In the beginning it was chaos and lack of alternative and a lot of hopes, but nothing. And then from 28 on was basically a royal dictatorship, and it was the killing of Radic in the parliament, very dramatic moments. And it was also about, because Radic, he was a Croatian Catholic farmer, and he said that what the Serbs are doing in Macedonia and in Kosovo is war crimes against Muslims. And he said, this is the big heroes who are killing women and children, Muslim women and children in Macedonia. They called it Macedonia. And then this Serb extremist, he was so angry about, he saw it a patriotic achievement to kill women and children. And he was accused for this in the parliament by Radic, and he took his pistol and he shot him in the parliament chamber. Of course, that was the status of bratstvo and jedinstvo. You say the truth, and you get killed by the genocidal guys. Because Racic, it was called, Racic was the killer and Radic was the victim. Yeah? And you can make the difference, you know. It was very clear. This was, Racic was from the south, where they always were fighting with the Muslims, and that was he saw it as this eternal duty to kill Muslims. You can always interpret in these borderlands, you can always interpret it differently, you know. The freedom, what Negoshi says in the mountain ref, you know, the defense of Montenegro and against the Turkish, that's very good, you know, freedom fight is very good. But when you are already the state, yeah, and then you somehow justify genocidal violence against innocent victims, yeah, by basically liberation struggle, when you're already liberated, then obviously it's genocide of a state against its own citizens. And just because they didn't like them because of their ethnicity or religion. And so Racic was a genocidal maniac, basically the role model of Mladic. And then Radic called him out in the parliament, and then he started to shoot around, and he killed actually, I think, 3 people in that moment in the chamber. And he killed the most important democratic politician of the Croats. And of course then was coming the dictatorship after that facing of chaos, and that was it. And then, to my best knowledge, there was a royal dictatorship until the war, and there was chaos, maybe some fake election, and then they had also a little bit of dance with fascism, like everybody in Europe, unfortunately, in the late 30s, or some kind of semi-fascism. And then, yeah, then it collapsed into the war, and the Nazis took over, and then came the struggle between the partisans and the royal forces for supremacy in the resistance. Then the British, under Stalin's pressure, they opted for the socialist resistance, and then Tito won here, and then he erected his socialist regime. In the beginning it was absolutely genocidal, yeah. It was absolutely the state, and the organized violence in massive forms, always justified on the genocidal violence of the Ustaša. You know, you can always say what kind of justification is then for counter-genocidal violence, yeah. I think it's not justified, because if you want to be a decent state, you have to judge people individually. And there was a big debate. Stalin wanted to shoot 10,000 of Germans as a revenge. Churchill said, that's not how we do the things in a democracy. And he is right so. And we are like that. We are democracies, and we don't do that. And Yugoslavia was not, so they decided for genocidal violence. I mean, Tito killed the Dormes, yeah. He killed the Ustaša fighters, the Croatians, yeah. He killed them in Bleiburg, yeah. And it's a fact, yeah. He killed masses of them, yeah. And that was seen as the revenge thing to do in such a regime. And then he killed the Muslim farmers because he wanted to collectivize them. He killed all the landlords, yeah. There was a lot of violence. He killed, of course, everybody who was against him in any way, until he couldn't. And that was a terror regime from 44 until 51, 52. It was getting a bit different, because then the Americans, then came the split, 48. He was a bit alone, because the Soviets didn't like his policy, he didn't like the Soviets, so he was alone. And then with the Korea War, the world changed again. The Cold War came to max, and then it was wild. And then the Americans started 51 with this Joint Chiefs of Staff policy to support Yugoslavia financially, and from that moment ever more. And then gradually, after a decade of semi-client status, until 15 years basically, from 51 to 65, and then 65 came the big chaos in Yugoslavia. They really had no money anymore. They had a lot of international engagements, and they played it full time, but they were out of money. And then they opened for sending the workers outside. That was the German way of helping them, because Germany concluded then the treaty with them, the Gastarbeiter Treaty in 68, and Austria in 71. And that was of course massive support because they sent a lot of remittances back. And then came the second thing, of course, the Americans started to pump money into Yugoslavia to keep them afloat, to make sure that Yugoslavia is not an ally of the Soviet Union. And that was the game they played for very long. And it was in many ways for them successful. And that phase was of course the end of the Rankovic. Rankovic was the military governor was the number 2. He was a brutal dictator. But that was the time until Gratiste 48, Banja Luka 28, yeah? 28 kilometers. So let's see if I can go to Omarska still and have some light for some videoing or not. I have also to give back the car. Let's see what I can manage in this day. Okay, good. Thanks a lot for everything here. I will stop now. Thanks a lot for listening. More to come here from the superhighway to Banja Luka. Support Bosnia in EU and NATO and support infrastructure for this beautiful country and visit it. It's a very nice country actually to visit. And you see the highways are better and in some years there will be perfect highways everywhere. Thanks EU, thanks this country's progress is possible. See the superhighway as a symbol for that.